take a way too early look at the 2021-2022 NHL season. We know hockey is over. We know all of you are sad here, except Paul, who is happy that the Habs lost. He expressed that with us yesterday, gave them the honor of receiving the mini cup, right? Or was that the Lightning? The Lightning get your mini cup because they knocked out the Habs, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Let's remedy our sadness here by looking ahead to the next hockey season. So in terms of early favorites for the 2021-2022 season, it's the Avalanche, not the Lightning, who are current cup favorites for next season. Colorado plus 500, Tampa plus 700 for the three-peat. Do you think the odds makers got it right, Paul?
Look, I agree with Colorado being a top pick, first of all, because I'll assume they re-signed Makar, Landeskog, and Saad and their goalies to return to the core group. They have a lot of cap space, unlike the defending champs. They also Colorado also has the benefit of what will be a softer division out west. Meanwhile, the champs could look very different next year, guys, and will be weakened as they won't be able to pull off the cap manipulation that they did this year. The Bolts have 17 players currently signed for $85 million. That's already over the cap. And that doesn't include guys like Savard, Foote, Colton, Coleman, and Goodrow, all of who played a big role in this cup win. And they also need to sign a backup goalie. Long and short of it, I expect them to come back to the pack in a competitive Atlantic division. I would rather favor Colorado out of these two.
AJ, what about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, Paul, everything Paul said is absolutely correct in terms of the cap hit. We'll just wait for the news that Nikita Kucherov is hurt and is going to miss the regular season again, and then they'll be fine. No, I mean, to Paul's point, though, you look at it, the Lightning are going to lose a top six player. Like, they're going to hope that Seattle takes Tyler Johnson maybe in his $5 million cap hit, but the entire league had a chance to take Tyler Johnson in that cap hit, and nobody wanted it. So I just don't know that Seattle would necessarily take him. Then they're stuck in that position. So they'll potentially have to make somebody like Andre Palat, Yanni Gourde, like available that's a little more attractive to the Kraken there. And so I think they're going to lose a top six player. Paul mentioned all the cap space that they have in Colorado, so they don't have to worry about that as much. And let's be honest, they could sit on signing Landeskog to a new deal until after the expansion draft. Then they don't have to protect him if he's not under contract.
Jeff, plus 500, Colorado, the favorite, Tampa Bay plus 700 for the three-peats. Odds makers, did they get it right?
Yeah, look, I mean, you look at it and you say, why is Colorado favorite? I mean, okay, they have Nathan McKinnon, but they lost to Vegas. And then obviously Tampa Bay just won the cup for the second year in a row. But you do have to look at the dynamics that are going to change in the offseason. And Colorado is just in a better spot. They've got the young defense. They're going to be able to bring all these guys back. They're going to do it. They're going to be smart about it, like AJ said, in my opinion. And Tampa, it's also just a story of two divisions. Tampa got by, their division this year, but they also, they didn't win the division, and they got Kucherov back for the playoffs. Like, it just worked out so perfectly for Tampa Bay last year. I don't see that happening again. They're in the tougher division. I agree with this. I do think the odds makers got it right. I think Colorado should be the slight favorite over Vegas. So.
Well, Jeff, sandwiched between those two teams, you got the Golden Knights in there plus 600. Do the Knights look like a team? Do you think that will be back next season?
Oh, they're definitely going to be back. Look, I mean, all you have to do is look at the Pacific Division and look how weak it's going to be next year. Vegas is going to win the Pacific Division. Like, there's no doubt about it. So they're going to be in the playoffs, and they're going to have a high seed. It's just a question for me. I just wonder if Vegas has enough kind of top-end talent to get it done. I mean, I like their top two lines. I think Mark Stone is really good, but when you match it up against like Tampa Bay's top line and then Colorado's top line, like, it does kind of stick out a little bit that maybe they're just a little bit underwhelming in that perspective from the elite teams. But this is a team that could definitely add a little bit of something on the bottom six as well. I think they have a little bit of room to improve. So I think Vegas is going to be back. But if you're asking me who I'd take, like, I'd just take Colorado at plus 500. I really do feel like they're the more elite team. They do need to get their goaltending figured out, and they need to have their goaltenders be healthy for a year. But other than that, I still would rather bet on the Colorado, even though you're getting slightly worse odds.
Okay, AJ, how you feel about the Golden Knights?
I agree with Jeff. Between the two, I would rather take Colorado as well. But for me, the Golden Knights are one top center away from being a complete team. They've got $6 million in cap space. That'll bring you in a top center. Push everything down a row there. Chandler Stevenson better off in a second line role. They need somebody who can play with Pacioretty and Stone. And that's really their only glaring error. They've got solid defensemen, guys that are contribute offensively. The top two lines, like I said, with that one kind of glaring error, are really good, and they've got one of the best goaltending tandems in the league. So if they bring in that top six center, I would expect you'll see that maybe their odds could even improve. They could drop closer to that plus 500 with Colorado with an addition there.
Paul, I mean, Golden Knights, like every team, should be applauded really for making it through a hectic season, but they don't make banners for effort unless you're the Predators here. So plus 600 for the Golden Knights. They going to be back?
Yeah, they will. They have 18 players signed and 6.1 million to sign 5 more players. They've got less work to do than the other 2 clubs this offseason. The only key free agent that's unsigned for them is Alec Martinez. They may be forced, though, to move one of their bigger ticket guys, and it might be their goalie. And I wonder how upset AJ might be with that. Maybe he'll go back to Pittsburgh, though, buddy. But in any case, Vegas will be a top contender in the West once again, regardless.
All right. Speaking of the Golden Knights here, though, we all know they made the Stanley Cup final in their first season of existence. It was really impressive. It was a great story. The next NHL expansion team, that's going to be the Kraken here, guys. They're going to see their lineup kind of start to take shape July 21st. That's the expansion draft. Obviously, no information yet as the draft has yet to happen. I think teams still have another week here to release their protected list. But could Seattle be set up for a great first season like Vegas? Or do you think other teams have kind of figured out the formula after last expansion draft? Paul, you're shaking your head yes.
I think the Kraken will definitely be a competitive club in year one, guys. They won't start with a loaded roster like Vegas per se, but I do expect they'll come up with a lineup that should be better than all the Western clubs, except for maybe Edmonton and Vegas in that division. I still count the 3 California clubs as non-contenders looking ahead. So that means they have to beat one out of Calgary or Vancouver. I see them certainly doing that and possibly finishing ahead of both and qualifying for that playoff spot in year one.
Jeff, can you see Seattle being competitive in year one?
For all the reasons Paul just said, yes. I mean, they're in the dynamite division to start your franchise in. The specific division is not good. Hashtag not good. Yeah, they're going to have to face Connor McDavid, and they're going to have to face, the Vegas Golden Knights. But they legitimately could be like the 4th best team in this division starting off. So it's going to be really interesting. I like it. I think that there's going to be some bigger names. Like we already mentioned, Tampa might be throwing someone out there like a Poulat. So I do think they're going to put together a pretty interesting roster as well. I think they have a legit shot to sneak into as like a bottom seed in the playoffs as well. So going to be very interesting. The West is going to be wide open again.
Damn, AJ, can you give me a reason they're not going to be good at all?
Well, it's because they're not going to get the same deals and capital that Vegas was able to squeeze out of everybody else. Everybody's wisened up to that. They're just going to let their guys go and let it be the end of the day. Look, we all knew that Vegas was going to take Marc-Andre Fleury. Everybody and their grandmother knew that they were going to take him. And yet Pittsburgh still gave a 2020 second round pick to them to just make sure. We're not going to see those deals. They're not going to have all this extra capital. We might see 1 or 2, but it's just not to the same level. They're not going to be able to then take those picks and those guys and shuffle them around in the same way that Seattle did to load up their roster even more. I just don't see them getting that sort of leverage. These guys are right. The Pacific is bad, but the Golden Knights also had that unfortunate event in Vegas that kind of gelled them together right at the start of the year. And really help them kind of rally around. Hopefully we don't see something similar like that in Seattle. So I just don't see them making the playoffs this year. I think you're going to see a kind of disconnected team that doesn't have that same leadership, that same rallying point, and that is not going to be as stacked.
Well, there are no odds out yet for this, but Connor McDavid would most likely be the favorite for the Hart again next season. It seems like for the near future, the MVP is just going to be his to lose each year. Who else, though, AJ, is a potential early Hart Trophy favorite for next year?
I think there's 3 guys that make the most sense as potential options here if you want to fade McDavid in this one. And that starts with Nathan MacKinnon, first and foremost. I think he is probably the biggest challenger there. Obviously, Austin Matthews is going to be a name as well. He'll continue to compete for the Rocket, I would imagine, every year. And then, of course, Leon Draisaitl for them as well, for Edmonton. So for my money, though, again, as you said, Emerson, we haven't seen the odds, but as soon as they come out, I imagine my preferred choice will be Nathan MacKinnon. He's such a linchpin on that team, and I think he can take them to bigger and better places this upcoming year. And so he'd be the guy that I would anticipate I'll put my money on at the start of the year.
Jeff, who else is on your radar?
I mean, look, I really don't think you should be considering too many people outside of McDavid and McKinnon. And I'm not even sure if you should be considering anyone outside of McDavid. We've talked about the Pacific Division already. Connor McDavid is going to absolutely light it up next year. I mean, he's going to have a weak team every second night here. So it really just sets itself up as this is already an Oilers team that relies heavily to like the point of their detriment on their top two players. They play a ton of minutes. And now you've got this division where you're just feeding him weak matchups night in, night out. Now McKinnon's going to get some of that same deal. And I really, I wouldn't argue with someone who said, I want to take a shot. I mean, we haven't seen the odds yet, but considering anyone outside of those two, at least in my opinion, especially with Matthews going back in a tougher division, I know Austin Matthews was in the running this year, and he's certainly a good player, but I just don't think you can consider anyone in this race outside of those two players. I'll throw out Alex Barkov's name as like an interesting, if you need someone over like plus 2,000 in odds or something, but I really don't think you should be betting anyone other than McDavid or McKinnon.
Okay, Paul, who will you be betting? We have less than 1 minute left in show.
I'll throw in the name of Nikita Kucherov to the one the other guys mentioned, but really it's Connor McDavid's trophy to lose. He's proven himself as a top talent in this league before this season, so he just needs to do what he's done in his early career. I expect that to continue. He's going to excel in a weak division. There are a number of stars, though, that we pointed out that will give him a run for it. I don't think it's a runaway favorite situation.